Hello and welcome to the second video. I just wanted to say thank you for all the subscribers to the channel. I was very overwhelmed, thank you, and all the views of the first video. It's much appreciated. It gives much encouragement, and please share my videos and this video, and if you'd like to buy me a cup of coffee, follow the donation links at the bottom of this video. Much appreciated. Now in my last video I alluded to the fact that the Daily Mail had written an article, and it's a very interesting article in this time of COVID and the information war and propaganda that's coming out from the mainstream media. And I thought it deserved a response. Just a little, from my perspective, the article, just for those who don't know about it, the links below, included two other people in the article. I don't know who they are, I've never heard of them, so I'm not going to be speaking for them. It's up, it's up to them if they want to respond to the article itself, but I had no contact with them, I don't know who they are. But I got an email from the Daily Mail, and I'll just read out the email, which was very interesting, if I can find it. So the journalist emailed me, and he wanted me to some answers or clarification on some points that he put here, and here are the points. In April, you spoke out after an appearance by vaccinologist Professor Sarah Gilbert on Andrew Marr's BBC programme on Twitter. This is. He says to me, you called scientific progress on a vaccine rushed out research, quoting me that I must have put this on Twitter. And I also wrote, not tested on kids, 80% chance it will work. Let her and her pro-COVID-19 vaccine scientists give it to their kids first. Now, he didn't put a date apart from April, when I supposedly did this tweet. It vaguely comes to mind, but so I couldn't find it to actually see. But I vaguely remember reading an article that, well, of course I know that the vaccine isn't being tested on children, and I know for a fact that well, for far as I know, the studies aren't finished. It hasn't been signed, sealed and delivered, so to speak, the vaccines, the COVID-19 vaccine trials, to deliver it to the public yet. And so, and there are lots and lots of scientists who are saying this vaccine is being rushed. very much so. I mean, there's been lots of other viruses, and there's lots of coronaviruses that a vaccine for has never been found for. So in a space of a few months, to pry on the hope of people, society wanting some safety from this supposedly dreaded, deadly virus, is there is a certain rush in the air. Now, as I said, it's not been tested on children, and these claims from the trials, from what's happening in the trials, is that it's 80% effective. Well, so as it's not been signed off as completely safe yet in any shape or form, and it's not been tested in children, and some people say it's only 80% effective, well, one would be wary of taking such a vaccine. It's only common sense. If it's not been tested on children, if it's unknown what the effectiveness is of the vaccine, so one has to be cautious. People have a right to be cautious of taking a drug, because lots of drugs, and most drugs, have effects and side effects and main effects. And unknown vaccines, one has to be very careful, and I'll go into detail a little bit later why. But anyways, that was the first point. But in relation to the request from the journalist, it was late on, and it was a Friday, Thursday or Friday, I was contacted, and it was my last day of work, really. I was working all day, and I said, well, I'm just working and going on holiday now, and maybe another time I could discuss it with him. So I didn't turn down discussing it with him, and he replied back saying, well, we're running a story tomorrow regardless. So I didn't have a chance really to put forward what I wanted to say to the journalist, which was a pity. I think a great pity, because the article, the title of the article was revealed. Locum GP is among those peddling dangerous anti-vax myths, as Boris Johnson praises flu jabs and damns doubters as nuts. I mean, first of all, it has to be stated that I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not an anti-vaxxer at all. I'm for rigorous scientific research and ethical approval, and safety checks and balances being signed off before a drug's released to the public. But by no means am I anti-vax. I mean, I've had vaccinations myself, and I'm not against children getting certain vaccinations. So, it's a complete nonsense to call me an anti-vaxxer. But the implication of the article was that, as the article says, a locum GP is amongst a group of healthcare workers that have been peddling anti-vax myths as scientists continue to search for a coronavirus. Well, again, if the journalist, there were 4 journalists that wrote this article. I don't know why it took 4 people to write this article. But in any case, If the journalists had done any research, they would have ascertained that psychoanalysts and therapists like me do not consider themselves healthcare workers or medical professionals. So that's very inaccurate. Psychotherapy, broadly speaking, from the non-medical, non-sort of health amelioration kind of standpoint, is about inviting someone the opportunity to converse with another person in a context where they hopefully can articulate their problems, their symptoms, in a way where they can come to understand them more and discover perhaps new threads, new meanings, to clear a path in some way to manage to live in the world. I mean, as Freud said quite clearly, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but essentially good health, you know, good mental health is a kind of happy side effect of psychotherapy in the kind of existential or psychoanalytic context. Sometimes uncomfortable truths arise in therapy, which might make one uncomfortable. They might make someone not so much happy or content, but troubled. But from that trouble spur them on to try to live with these difficulties in some sense, or to try to improve them. But psychotherapy as such is about freeing the psyche, or freeing one's being to be able to bear the uncomfortabilities and contradictions of life. I mean, the great Russian philosopher Lev Shestov said the philosophy wasn't about finding some soothing comfort in existence. So philosophy, and I apply this to psychotherapy as well, is this: it is to undermine the foundation of one's own existence, and that can be a difficult challenge for many people. No doubt I'll go more in detail about these ideas in other videos, but essentially what I want to state here is that to kind of equate what I do as being a mental, a health worker or medical worker is not quite right. I mean, I'll forgive the journalists. It's an easy mistake to make. I'm not going to hold it against them. It's very easy. I think in the public consciousness, people who have a general kind of grasp of psychotherapy, is that they do see it as a medical or health practice. But really, it's, you know, some psychotherapists do see themselves as that, no doubt, but many don't, and I think it's fair enough to just put that out there. And so I mentioned the first point about the rushed vaccine that had not been tested in kids, and the other points are very interesting, and I'll go into these now that he wanted me to address. He says, you also retweeted conspiracy posts by others about COVID-19 yesterday. One by Militant Me. It's a Twitter account that I retweeted. And I know that I follow this person actually. Militant Me said, I want to know why none of our leaders are quantifying why they are pushing ahead with social distancing and mandatory masks when the virus is negligible and not dangerous to 99.95% of the population. And I commented in response to this tweet, and I said that they don't have any numbers or science to back up their diktats. Well, of course. A lot of these demands for compulsory masks and social distancing and the actual amount of deaths in the UK, supposed deaths, because there's an inquiry into the numbers, but say the numbers are as they are, and it's as I said, it's between 2,500 and 4,500 in Scotland. Different measures and different sort of variations of how they measure it in what context, but in relation to the global flu influenza seasons in recent years, between 290,000 and 650,000 died globally from influenza, and that's with a vaccine. And of course, there's been no lockdowns or social distancing measures or anything like that ever been put in place. And so by saying that they've got no numbers or science to back it up, well, there is no science or numbers to back it up. I mean, where is the science to back up wearing a mask? Where is the science to back up for social distancing? Where is the science to back up lockdown? There's a mathematician called Andrew Mather on YouTube who's done a lot of analysis into this, and essentially if you go to his channels and his very informative videos, he shows quite clearly that lockdown in all these different countries in the world hasn't made any difference to the trajectory of the virus. He queries the numbers that are being put out. He questions the numbers, and of course the government are launching an inquiry into the numbers. So there's question marks all round. I mean, the science is not settled here. The dust's not settled. As I said in my previous video, in science there's always going to be opposing views. There's always going to be some scientists who think one thing about a vaccine. There's got to be other scientists who think another. And in the scientific realm, you know, in academia, there'll be conferences and scientists will present papers on different vaccines, on different medicines, and they'll have discussions and arguments about who is right, who is wrong, what can be done to improve the research. But what you see here with this Daily Mail article, of course, is any deviation from the government science, the government approved science, is immediately labelled conspiracy. Of course it's not conspiracy. I mean, I was brought up in psychological science. I studied depression and the effects of antidepressants, and how antidepressants affects cognition, thinking, and conscious thought. and in regard to depression, the same thing, investigating cognition. And it's a huge field, and of course there's lots of different psychologists, neuroscientists, behavioural scientists, have very different views, and they have lots of disagreements, but that's a healthy thing. I mean, it's not a terrible thing to happen, but in this brave new normal of COVID, suddenly this fertile and very proper context for scientific discussion is somehow being regarded as something that should be stopped. As I mentioned in the last video, the MP in Britain, the woman whose name I forgot again, but I'll put a link into the description below to point out who it is. But she alluded to the idea, or she stated that we shouldn't fetishise debate. Well, that's very, very dangerous. I think debate's very healthy. I mean, the government are pushing this a very pro-vaccine narrative, and social media and the mainstream media and the government itself are very biased in not being forthwith with a lot of the facts about the vaccine trials. Whereas the scientists in the vaccine trials are probably very, very good people, trying to, do a very important thing in the world by developing medicines. I mean, I was very interested in the COVID vaccine trials, for myself, because when I was doing my research on depression, I had to go through medical ethics to look at the effects of antidepressants on people. So I kind of knew what would be in store for such a trial. I mean, it's a much bigger trial than what I was doing, but yeah, when you have a medical ethics trial, you have to get participants and you have to recruit them to the study, and the participants have to consent, and they have to be made aware of what exactly they are participating in. And that is normal practice. And so I was very interested to see what, in comparison to the mainstream media, in comparison to what the UK government and the Scottish government are coming out with regards their very pro-vaccine narrative, I wanted to see exactly what the vaccine trial people were saying. So I wrote to the Oxford vaccine trial people, and they very kindly provided me with a lot of the ethics documents, which are freely available to the public, of course, which they should be. It's common practice. And so they were very kind, and they sent me them, and I think it's very interesting. I thought, well, what are they saying? What are they telling the participants? So this is the information sheet for participants for the vaccine trials. So this is one of the information parts of the information sheet for participants. It goes under the title of serious reactions. With any vaccination, there is a risk of rare, serious adverse events, such as allergic reactions. These may be related to the immune system or to the nervous system. Severe allergic reactions to vaccines, anaphylaxis, are rare but can be fatal. In case of this unlikely event, medication for treating allergic reactions is kept in the clinic room, and the investigators are appropriately trained in the management of anaphylaxis. Reactions in the nervous system are also extremely rare, but can cause an illness called Guillain-Barré syndrome. This is a condition in which people can develop severe weakness and can be fatal. These adverse events have not previously been seen following administration of similar vaccines using the ChAdOx1 as a viral vector. With any new medicine or vaccine, there is always the possibility of unexpected side effects. You will be provided with a 24-hour study mobile number. If you experience unexpected events or become in any way concerned, you can use this to contact one of the study doctors at any time, and we will ask you to record these symptoms in the e-diary too. And they give them must give them a diary to fill out to record their symptoms or how they're feeling after they've got their dose of the vaccine. Now this is all fair enough. This is very helpful for participants to know, and it's good that the vaccine trial people are providing this information. This is all above board, but of course the euphoria of the promise of a vaccine excludes the actuality of what participating in this vaccine trial entails. I mean, I think people are very brave to take part in such a trial. You know, quite a courageous thing, you know, to think that they're participating in something that may help the health of the population. So, I mean, and, you know, maybe we should have a clap every Thursday for people who take part in that. Theoretical concerns. Could this vaccine make COVID-19 disease worse? This is very interesting. In the past, experimental vaccines were developed by different research groups against the SARS virus, which is in the same family as the COVID-19 virus and also infects the lungs. In some cases, animals that received certain types of experimental SARS vaccines appeared to develop more severe lung inflammation when they were later infected with the SARS compared with unvaccinated animals. There has also been one report of this increased disease associated inflammation being seen in a mouse study for a vaccine against MERS-CoV, another related virus, but this has not been observed in any other reported animal studies. These problems were not seen in animal studies with the ChAdOx1 MERS-CoV vaccine, which is very similar to the vaccine we used in this study. When the animals were exposed to the wild virus, studies of the ChAdOx1 nCoV-19 vaccine in animals are currently ongoing, but we do not know whether this could also be a side effect of exposure to the pandemic COVID-19 virus in this COVID-19 vaccine study, or whether this effect could occur in humans, or whether this might lead to more severe COVID-19 disease in some cases. So in a sense, they're putting it out there to the participants that, you know, if one has developed symptoms of COVID-19, this vaccine may make the symptoms worse. So, I mean, that's again fair enough. It's a fair enough thing to put, and a very helpful thing for participants, I think. But of course, Nicola Sturgeon is promoting taking part in a vaccine trial the other day, and you know, there's no mention of the basic facts of participation in a drug trial. They very much have a kind of mania about participating and developing this vaccine, whereas the actual science of it, you know, the trench, the people in the trench, the scientists and the participants doing this research, you know, it's not as euphoric, it's not as utopian. You know, they're trying to do serious work. And I don't think the government narrative on the vaccine or the mainstream media does the science or the scientists any favours. So, what are the advantages of taking part? You will not necessarily gain any direct benefit from the trial, but the information gained from the study might help to develop an effective vaccine against COVID-19 if in the future you become exposed to COVID-19. No, sorry, I'll say it again. If in the future you become exposed to COVID-19, you should not assume that the vaccine you received in this study will give you any protection against COVID-19. So, again, very helpful, because it's an experimental vaccine and the science is still out. There's no way of knowing if this vaccine will, in the future, prevent you from getting COVID-19. And I suppose this is where a lot of the talk about someone having to have multiple doses, like Bill Gates mentioned this, comes into play. But back to this accusation of rushed out vaccine, as you can see from this short information sheet of a document, which is a very, very long document, the science is not as firm foundations as the narrative from the government and the politicians make out. I think it's very unhelpful. Things have not been signed off. Efficacy has not been signed off. Side effects have definitely not been signed off. But as you see, the actual scientists on the ground who are actually doing the work, they know the score, and they're very pragmatic, as you can hear from the ethics forum that the Oxford people kindly sent me. So I don't think it's a conspiracy, what I am thinking about in regards to putting on social media. And of course the other doctors who are speaking out against the vaccine are scientifically minded. You know, they have similar doubts. But because it's different from the government, is that such a bad thing? It's healthy debate. We have to debate this before we give it to people. We have to debate this before we give it to children. You can't give it to children if it's not tested in children. And so I think in a sense the Daily Mail article just represents the kind of hype around the possibility of a vaccine being developed. A kind of euphoria or a mania. Because I mean, I'm not a vaccine developer or a vaccine researcher, but from my understanding of the research that I have read, I mean personally I doubt that the COVID vaccine will be a utopia to solve the situation. That's my personal feelings on it. I mean, we've had many coronaviruses and different influenza viruses, and you know, we have a flu vaccine, but still, just a couple of years ago, 650,000 people died globally from influenza. So I think it's a little bit simplistic and premature to think that a COVID vaccine will solve the situation. I mean, and that's got nothing to do with the conspiracy. That's just what seems to be the case historically within research and science. I mean, in some sense, I think the Daily Mail article was, in a sense, a kind of survey of the public mood, because the government are pushing this narrative of the vaccine, and of course, in the comment section of the Daily Mail article, people comment, and it seemed to be the case that a lot of people do have doubts and are worried, and of course rightly so. I mean, who wouldn't be worried about taking a drug and the health effects that might have? I mean, it's not the first time in history that a drug has ever been released to the public where it's been unsafe. You know, this is not new territory. You know, psychiatric drugs, drugs for other conditions. You know, drugs have been recalled. The safety profile of a drug has been called into question. You know, like antidepressants, for example, and the potential for negative effects regarding increased suicidal ideation. By the work of Dr. David Healy, the psychiatrist, you know, points this out quite clearly. And a lot of people who've taken antidepressants of the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor variety, you know, their testimony to this is quite clear. So people do have a right to question and to worry, and they should have the right to do this without being called a conspiracy theorists. So, lastly, you know, the Daily Mail, you know, they wrote this article calling into question my dangerous conspiratorial views. It's very interesting. If COVID-19 was such a dangerous thing, why would you send an unmasked journalist to my mother's house, my old mother, very frail, shielding, and come to the house and question her twice? It's not a good look. I suppose it's not a good look to come to someone's house twice and not leave your phone number, or your card either. I should qualify that. I'm not sure if he told my mother he was using from the Daily Mail, but I presume it was. I've yet to hear any different. But it was, you know, she was very upset. So I'm not happy about that. But life goes on, doesn't it? Things get very carried away within the media. They get hyped up to such a huge degree. It's very interesting. Just a few tweets from me about a vaccine gets lots and lots of attention from a national newspaper. And but yeah, a few years ago when I published my book, The Testimony of Experience, which was about the Philadelphia Association community set up by R.D. Laing, the radical psychiatrist. Not even the local newspaper in my area where I live would publish a story about it, or there was a local book festival which invited celebrity chefs who'd written books and things like that, but they didn't invite me, a local author who was writing about kind of alternative care, so to speak, for people with mental health issues, which I thought was, at the time was strange. But it seems the press like bad news, which is a shame, because there are a lot of good things in the world, a lot of good things going on in the world, and they get sidelined, which is a shame. It's a great shame. There's a lot of people doing good work. I mean, even the people working on the vaccine trial, young scientists, no doubt, postdoctoral researchers, hoping they're doing a good thing for society. But the government spokespeople, the Nick Hancocks of this world, and the Boris Johnsons and the Nicola Sturgeons, waxing euphorically on the hope of a vaccine, when the reality of it is, it's much less exciting. It's more pragmatic, more grounded in reality. So that's all I really wanted to say on this topic. So onwards and upwards to next time, and thank you for watching, and take care. See you soon. Hello, it's just a little update on that video about the Daily Mail that I just made. I forgot to mention the point from the reporter, the journalist who asked me for clarification on some of those tweets. He also asked me about retweeting David Icke, having the temerity, so to speak, to retweet David Icke, which is a very interesting thing to point out. David Icke, he said, this is the journalist, he's saying, also yesterday you retweeted a post by conspiracy theorist David Icke saying compulsory mask wearing is calculated psychological war on the population. And well, whatever you think of David Icke, he was actually spot on the money there, because what the Daily Mail, not just this article but all the articles really, are not telling people is the fact that within SAGE there is a group called SPI-B, which is Applied Behavioural Psychology, and they have documents online freely available to the public, and in their documents, working in regard the governmental response to COVID-19, they highlight the fact that the personal threat that people have, the fear they have of COVID, should be increased so they adhere to the measures. And they also recommend a kind of culture of shaming so people can adhere to the measures. So David Icke was spot on. It's a psychological tactic by the government, what they're doing, their various infomercials and briefings and the associated mainstream media Operation Fear regarding COVID-19. And so if the Daily Mail had done a little bit of research, or maybe they have, I don't know, they would quite easily see that applied behavioural psychology has been used in the British population to manipulate their behaviour, and that's a fact. I mean, a similar group, the similar people as well, were involved in something a few years ago, and I don't know if this project's still running, but it was about 2016, and it created a lot of uproar amongst the left, the far left activists, and I was very much in support of I was against what the government were doing. When it was the coalition government between the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives, it was essentially implementing cognitive behavioural therapy in job centres. They were basically looking at people who are unemployed as somehow having some kind of psychological lack for being out of work, almost like unemployment had been psychopathologized, and that they were placing psychologists in job centres to carry out CBT on job seekers. And of course, a lot of people in the far left and people in the psychotherapy world were aghast at this, because psychotherapy has no place in a job centre where one's income is unemployment benefit, etc., is attached to. It kind of violates that place where people can speak freely. And there's lots written online about it. I mean, I wrote an article about it, and I'll leave it in the link below. But it was but interestingly, all the big psychological organisations, psychotherapy organisations, colluded in this. They were complicit. And much like what's happening now with the COVID-19 SPI-B subgroup of SAGE, the British Psychological Society and all the other psychotherapeutic organisations are silent on what this applied psychology subgroup are doing, because they are actively wanting to make people frightened. And of course, this will affect mental health. It's dubiously ethical. And yet they are silent. And interestingly, even the far left activists who were against the psychopathologization of unemployment are silent on this thing, the SPI-B COVID-19 group now. It's very interesting why they are silent. Why are they silent? A governmental group of applied psychologists applying psychology, wanting to frighten people, wanting to get people to shame people. You know, if you go to the British Psychological Society Code of Ethics, I think there's a lot of questions to be answered. And of course, one of the members of the SPI-B group is the head of policy at the British Psychological Society. So I just wanted to mention that about David Icke. I'll keep retweeting David Icke. I think some of the things that he says is very interesting and informative. You know, the Boris Johnson thing of anti-vaxxers are nuts kind of thing, and if you tweet David Icke, you know, you're crazy, something like that. Well, that has no real effect on me. I find it quite, well, offensive in some sense, because in this age of diversity and inclusion, you know, to make fun of someone by calling them nuts, or make fun of someone because they listen to someone who they think is nuts, is a strange place in this very politically correct world to be. And, you know, as part of my work, for many years of working in the mental health world, different contexts, hospitals, the communities, privately, you know, I meet a lot of people, and you know, one doesn't dismiss what people say just because some person might regard them as crazy. Sometimes, often, people who have mental health problems, so to speak a lot of truth, more truth, often, are more truthful. And I think Boris Johnson should be very careful with that language, because you know, it's not a very nice thing to say to people, you know, that you're crazy because you hold certain views or you say certain things. It's very immature, in fact. It's very ill-informed, and I don't really have not much respect for him to come out and say these sort of things, and the Daily Mail for alluding to the fact that because I retweet David Icke, it's somehow I should be ashamed of it. Well, I'm not going to be ashamed of it. I encourage everyone who's on social media to read some of David Icke's stuff. I don't agree with everything that he says. I don't agree with a lot of things that he says. But that's neither here or there. He was spot on. The population of the UK is being targeted by psychological operations. It's in the public domain. Look it up. So I just wanted to add that because I forgot in the last piece. But again, till next time, take care.